With Title Update 17 came yet one more reason to farm the DZ. Now that the Eagle Bearer and Ravenous have been added to the general loot pool, there's reason for PVE players to want to be in the DZ to farm landmarks. One other big reason, especially after you've passed expertise level 10 to be in the DZ, is the increased chance of exotic components being in the landmark caches. There's also the DZ resources that you can get for purchasing things from the DZ vendors. The big problems with the DZ are twofold. As a largely PvE player, you need to have a build that works for clearing the landmarks and also allows you to be able to defend yourself against other players should they decide that they want to go rogue. Before you decide to enter the Dark Zone, you need to wrap your head around the fact that you are going to die in there. And if you're largely a PvE player, you're going to die a lot. Nothing that you get at a landmark is yours until you've successfully extracted it. In this video, I'm going to give you two options for builds. The first build offers excellent survivability and is more PvP oriented than PvE oriented. It gives you excellent survivability and good damage output. The second build attempts to offset some of the current PvP metas and keep you more or less invisible to the PvP players and allow you to get in, farm, and get out with minimal fuss and muss. If you do get into a PvP encounter, it does offer very good survivability. So let's get into it. Hey everyone, it's Agent Mead from Delta Tactical. In this video, I'm going to go over two builds suitable for use in the Dark Zone. First one I have equipped here is more of a traditional Dark Zone build. It has very good survivability from the Catharsis Mask and offers good damage output because of the pieces that are in there and the multiplicative damage that it stacks. So let's go over this top to bottom. First and foremost, I'm using the Firewall Specialization. You can see that it recovers 200% of your armor and 200% of your health over 10 seconds. The way you would use this, or utilize this medkit, is if you take any damage, try and find cover, pop the medkit, and then push very hard for the next 10 seconds. Because your medkit or your armor kit is allowing or is regenning 200% of your health for that 10-second period. This is probably the most powerful medkit in the game for PvP play. It does also give you the Striker Shield. In my experience in the DZ with PvP play, a shield is more of a liability than it is an asset. It will break at a very inopportune moment, stagger you, and it's probably going to get you killed. So for skills, you will want to choose something different. Your primary should be an assault rifle. Choose the one that best fits your playstyle. In my case, I've chosen to use a Carbine 7 for two reasons. Number one, it's got the highest expertise of all of the ones in my inventory, so it's doing very good damage. Second, and most importantly, and the reason that it's the highest expertise, it's the most forgiving assault rifle in the game. In my case, it's expertise level 20. It's got max assault rifle damage, max health damage, and damage to targets out of cover. In PvP play, damage to targets out of cover is your best option for the attributes. In PvE, arguments can be made that it's less viable. In PvE play, a lot of your targets are in cover, so you don't get advantage of this. If you end up in a rogue encounter, though, they will be out of cover pushing you hard. This is your best multiplier. I've chosen to use Optimist. Flatline is probably more powerful. I only have one of these, so if I'm going to be pulsing the enemy, I'm going to use the Kingbreaker instead. So this one I've chosen to use Optimist. I've also tested this with Strained. In broadly general terms, Optimist gives slightly better damage output than Strained. Strained, you're getting your damage from crits. This one, you're just getting weapon damage. So for this build and for this rifle, I've chosen to use Optimist. Your secondary for this build is completely optional. For this build, I've chosen to use the Scorpio and I've chosen to use the Orbit pistol. Use this entire build as a template, put it together with the weapons that you have, and build it to your playstyle. As far as the gear pieces, for the mask, I'm using the Catharsis Mask. In landmarks, you're going to take damage. As you take damage, you get increased weapon damage, which means you're going to be dropping the enemies quicker. In PvP, same thing. You are going to take damage. Therefore, this will increase your weapon damage as you're taking damage. And once it reaches max stacks, it will purge, which generates that healing cloud, which restores 5% of your max armor for 10 seconds. It may be the difference between winning an engagement and losing an engagement if you get into PvP. I'm using the Matador, the Walker and Harris Matador for perfect adrenaline rush. Again, when you're getting pushed, you will get some bonus armor. So that's one more thing that a rogue agent would have to cut through in order to get to your actual armor and be able to kill you. Walker and Harris in this slot is also excellent because it gives you 5% additional weapon damage on top of the 15% weapon damage. And the one that I've got is God rolled at this point. It's max crit damage, max crit chance with a crit damage mod. Forgot to mention the mod on the Catharsis. It's a crit chance mod because I needed to get my crit chance up, and we'll go over that with the stats. For the chest piece, I'm using Fenris because I'm using an assault rifle, and I've chosen to use the Talon Unbreakable. I just normalized the stats so that you can see what this is going to give you in PvP should you end up in PvP play. It gives you 50% of your armor. Its cooldown is 60 seconds. So I'm at 1.7 million armor. That gives me an additional 50% on top of that, which is another 850,000 armor on top of the 1.7 million the base armor for this build. Again, it could be the difference between surviving a rogue encounter and not. This one, I've rolled it to armor. It's max crit damage, max crit chance, and a crit damage mod. For the gloves, I'm using the Contractor's gloves for the damage to armor. This one I've rolled to an armor core as well, and it's got max crit chance. Holster is Picaro's. Probably best in slot in this particular case for this build because it does give you an armor and a weapon damage core, and I've rolled this one to crit chance. And the last piece is Fox's Prayer, again, for its damage to targets out of cover. Rolled this one to armor, and it's got max crit chance. For the stats for this, I'm at 60% crit chance. I'm actually a tick over 60, so I'm at the cap, and I'm at 92% crit damage. So this one does actually hit quite hard. I'm at 75% headshot damage, so know where your damage is coming from so that you can adjust your aim accordingly. So in this particular case, max damage for me is going to be headshot crits. For the armor, there's no armor on kill. There's a slight amount of armor regeneration, plus there's the Catharsis mask itself. So it's 1.672 million armor. It rounds to 1.7. For the skills, I'm using the Scanner Pulse. That should be fairly obvious. You want to know where people are around you at all times. A couple of options that you have here. Certainly the Pulse is one. The Decoy is excellent, especially if you need to get away or pull somewhere to heal when you're doing landmarks. From a situational awareness standpoint, I prefer the Scanner Pulse. Riot Foam is another viable option in this slot. It does give you the opportunity to stick an agent in place and burn them down. And the last one is the Defender Drone. This one may be the difference between surviving an encounter and not. With this build, my Defender Drone is a tier 0. So I upped the damage reduction value to 10%. That effectively, if you're up against a rogue agent that's got their weapons up to max at currently 22%, this does help protect you from some of that damage bonus that they're getting from their weapon. With Catharsis and the way the rest of the build is put together with Unbreakable, it probably matches pretty closely what the other players are going to be up against. So now it's a matter of who fires first. If it looks like a rogue encounter is unavoidable, attack first. It's probably your best defense in that particular case is a good offense. So that's build number 1. Build number 2 is more designed to counter some of the current meta for PvP play. You're going to have players that are running Heartbreaker. You're going to have players that are running Spotter, Flatline, Perfect Flatline. They're going to be trying to pulse you to find your position. So this build is designed to counter those benefits that they get. So how am I going about doing that? I tried a couple different variations of this build. This one outshone the others. So it does require to use the new Ninja Bike Messenger bag. In this case, I'm using Technician because I'm running Kingbreaker. So with Technician, when you spec into rifles, you do get the linked laser pointer. And I just realized I made a huge error when I was running this. I wasn't getting benefit of the assault rifle damage. So bear that in mind when you watch the play that's going to go on at the end of this. I'm missing out on 15% weapon damage, which raises another point, and I can't stress this enough, and I still make this error all the time. Make sure when you're putting a build together that you spec into the weapons you're going to be using. So in my particular case, I'm using shotguns and assault rifles. If you want the linked laser pointer, can't recommend it enough for this build. You also have to spec into rifles. On all skill specializations or specialization trees, you will get this, which is the 50% pulse resistance. That's going to play into how this build gets put together. So we're using the Technician specialization. For my primary, I'm running the Kingbreaker. This one happens to be expertise level 18. It's max assault rifle damage, max health damage, max damage to targets out of cover, and its talent is Perfect Flatline. So it amplifies weapon damage to 20% to pulsed enemies. I'm running Technician. I've got the linked laser pointer on the underbarrel slot. As soon as you aim down sights at a target, you're pulsing the enemy. So this will proc, assuming that they're not running a build like this, which counters that. So bear that in mind. There is no perfect build for the Dark Zone. Builds can be countered. This one is attempting to counter some of the meta, but if you end up running against someone who's using a status effect build and skills, you're going to die. Secondary in this case is the rock and roll shotgun. Again, it's max shotgun damage, max damage to armor, max damage to targets out of cover. Its talent is perfectly extra, and I'm also running the linked laser pointer on the long underbarrel rail. I'm running the orbit pistol. That one is completely optional, and in fact, most of the weapons here are completely optional. These are what I chose to run with to maximize my damage as I went through or go through this. I wanted to put together a build that has maximum pulse resistance. This build is 100% pulse resistant. The best way to do it is with 3 pieces of yaw or 3 pieces of system corruption, and then 1 perfect pulse resistance mod. So you get 50% from your specialization, you get 10% from the mod, and then either system corruption or yaw give you 40% pulse resistant, which takes you up to your 100. I didn't have all the pieces necessary to do it, so therefore I went with the Ninja Bike Messenger bag. So I'm running 2 pieces of yaw gear, which ends up being 3 pieces because of Ninja Bike. Again, in a perfect world, this would be crit chance, crit damage, so a non-named mask. I'm using what I had available to me. So this one I've rolled to armor. It's got 10% health damage. It's got max crit chance, and I'm running that 10% pulse resistance mod. And you can see with the yaw gear, I'm getting 10% hazard protection, plus 5% weapon damage, which is another good reason to use the yaw gear. But most importantly, with the 3-piece, it's 40% pulse resistant. Ninja Bike should be fairly self-evident why I'm running this, and it's because of its talent resourceful, so it slots into any equipped gear or brand set and takes it up 1 notch. Second piece of yaw is coming from the holster. This one, again, in a perfect world, it wouldn't have hazard protection here. It would have crit damage. I'm using what I have until I can farm a better piece. Max armor, hazard protection, and max crit chance. And the rest of the build is running Heartbreaker. I'm using 3 pieces, which takes this up to a 4-piece Heartbreaker set. So I'm getting 15% assault rifle damage. You get LMG damage. I'm not utilizing that. It gives better weapon handling, which is your accuracy, stability, and reload speed, all of which are going to help you in an engagement. And then Heartstopper adds weapon hits on pulsed enemies. And again, I'm pulsing everything I aim at, assuming that they don't have complete pulse resistance. Gives 1% bonus armor and 1% damage to pulsed enemies. Because I'm running the chest piece, it increases the stacks from 50 to 100. This is the reason that I'm running the rock and roll shotgun. If you end up in a PvP encounter, start with the rock and roll. Once you've emptied it, your stacks will be high enough that when you switch to your assault rifle, you'll burn them down. And you'll see in the gameplay footage I'm going to roll at the end, I managed to do that. It was very close. The person I was up against had an excellent build, but I was able to come out on top because of all of the things that I've baked into this build. Running the chest piece, running the gloves, and let's go back to the chest piece for a second. It's got crit chance and crit damage mod. The gloves are not quite max armor and crit chance, and the knee pads are max armor and max crit chance. For the stats for the weapon itself, I'm at 50% crit chance, 68.5 crit damage, and 75% headshot damage on my main. The weapon damage goes up as I pulse the enemies, so it's very important to keep an eye on your, or at least where you can, keep an eye on your Heartbreaker stacks as you go into engagements. Try and start engagements when you're clearing landmarks with your shotgun to build your stacks. Then the gun itself will maintain your stacks. This one has no armor regeneration, no armor on kill, so you are relying on your armor, but it's got a good high. I can increase this slightly. As you saw in some of my pieces, they're not quite perfect. The armor will go up very, very slightly from here. I think it's another 20,000. And it's the exact same skills that I was running on the previous build. I'm using the scanner pulse and I'm running the defender drone. With this build, it obviates the utility or benefits of Heartbreaker, Spotter, Perfect Spotter, the Kingbreaker with Flatline, other weapons, or with Perfect Flatline, other weapons with Flatline. It takes that benefit away from them. Likewise, with this build, if I end up running up against someone with a similar build, I lose the benefit of the Kingbreaker and of the Heartbreaker. So bear that in mind. It's not a perfect build, but it does offer very good survivability. This one actually hits harder once I've got Heartbreaker stacks than the previous build that I showed you. One other benefit of this build, the way it's set up, your skills are actually at tier 2. Your defender drone does better with this build. It's got 10% damage reduction from its expertise, and it's also got 10% damage reduction. So I'm actually at 20% damage reduction. So I'm pretty much negating the expertise level of someone with a max expertise firearm that they're using against me. For a while. The drone doesn't last forever. If you see right here, the duration is 24 seconds. Long enough to get through any PvP encounter, generally speaking. And then the pulse itself, your duration is 13 seconds. Twofold benefit of it, you know where they are, and you've already pre-pulsed them for going into an encounter. So you will know in advance whether or not they are pulsable, whether they have a pulse-resistant build as well. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. If you're new to the channel and you like the content, please consider a subscription to the channel. It does help. It helps me out. It helps the channel out. And then please interact with the video in one way, shape, or form. Likes, comments, and shares all help the YouTube algorithm get out to a wider audience, which means that I'm able to put out content like this for you. So this is Agent Meat signing off. Thanks for watching and have a great day.
Detecting additional hostile contacts. Contaminated gear. drop incoming. Dark zone drop has been delivered. Incoming order. Vital signs critical.
That is 5 seconds. Fucking right in my face! Fuck you, motherfucker!
Contaminated gear detected. Now detecting contaminated gear. Incoming dark zone drop. Contaminated gear detected. Detecting high threat enemy patrol.
Can't wait till chow time. Getting darker every minute.
Oh yeah.
Run ahead!
Screw you! Wait for the fucker! Save this one for you! Oh, shit!
A shade agent has claimed the dark zone. Dark zone drop expired. Extraction called for.
Helo inbound.
Extraction called. Extraction helo. Almost within range. Defender drone detected. Hostile defender drone detected. Hilo is returning to base. Nearby agent has gone rogue. Rogue agent detected.